when you were talking about how Gail was and how she was tough to read, and she kind of manipulated the situation. Do you think part of that was because Zappa, the way he was to her, like a woman in her situation?
Yes, I mean, when Mick Jagger came to the house, he and Marianne Faithfull sat in the kitchen, and Frank and Gail were on the other side of the big square table. And Mick Jagger and Marianne Faithfull, he spoke, she spoke, he spoke. It was like a double act, right? The other side of the table, Frank, droll, spoke, and Gail sat there mute. She never spoke when they socialized. When she was with him, she was always mute. And she told me that when I first met her in New York, and when Frank invited me to go and see him there, and I was shocked to find she was there. I didn't know he was married. She came out to get a taxi with me, and she told me that Frank was very jealous of her, and she was not allowed to look at another man. That she had once run across the road when they were in the street to talk to another guy that she knew, and when she came back, he was absolutely livid and said, "Don't ever do that again. Otherwise, or you're out." Something like that. I mean, and so she never, when Mick Jagger came, and we went to the studio to hear Beggar's Opera being mixed, and we all went to the studio. They invited us there. Frank was annoyed because I went, because it was one of my few groupie days, because Mick Jagger was something as far as I was concerned.
Right.
And, so he was a bit annoyed with me. But anyway, so when they were there, Mick Jagger did flirt with her. He flirted with her, because he's a natural flirt. He's a very, very attractive man, actually. And you can see why he's got all these women running around after him. But so he tried to flirt with her, and she was very, very modest. She did not respond at all. She was sitting next to Frank. She wouldn't dare.
Right.
And
so she wasn't afforded.
Obviously affected her. But I mean, if you want me to go into the other aspect of her life where she had to share all these women with him, that's another aspect of her that I think destroyed her, really, probably destroyed her. She put up with it. She had this attitude, oh, well, if you're married to a rock star, you've got to put up with groupies. They're going to have groupies on the road. But Frank took it one step further, and he brought them back home with him. And that was a stomach-wrenching thing to do. I think that was, and I didn't judge him at the time. Well, it didn't happen when I was there. Only once Gail told me the first time that, do you want me to tell you this story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, okay. Well, when I was talking to Gail, she rang me up and said she was going to write a book about Frank's groupies, and and she said, "I want you to help me, Pauline." So I said, "Oh, okay." So I was thrilled to bits. So another book I might write, and we were sitting having coffee, and she said, "I'm going to start with you, Pauline." I said, "I'm not Frank's groupies," and she said, and that's another story. But anyway, in the telling, she said that Frank had invited Francesca, a girl who was at the house quite often, to go down and sleep with him. And Gail had got all the bedding ready for them, and she'd got the duvet and the pillows and everything to take down, and she took them down for them.
Wow.
But Francesca came back up after a little while and said she couldn't do it because Gail, this is how she operated. She'd already made very close friends with Francesca. She'd got into Francesca's skin like she did with mine. And
Right.
so Francesca couldn't do it. But there were others who'd already had on the road in Europe. He brought groupies back from Europe. And Gail really was torn to bits, I think, when that was going on, because it wasn't just a groupie thing on the road. This was
Right.
in her house, and she had
Yeah.
to move upstairs on her own.
Oh,
Can you
Jesus.
imagine what that did to her? So
Right.
I think she deserves more sympathy than she gets. But she had the choice, didn't she? She did have the choice. She could have
Right.
gone out, and she chose to stay. She
Yeah.
chose to stay.
Right.
And each
Yeah.
of these women in turn she made friends with. That's what she did. She did it that way. She made friends with each of the women.